Here we're going to talk about triangles, different ways to classify them, and then some potential questions you might get regarding how they're classified. So the first way to classify a triangle is based on the measurement of its angles. And so if you go back to the video about geometry that's on the Facebook page, you'll see how we have classified various angles. One of them was called acute. And so a triangle in which all of the angles are less than 90 degrees is called an acute triangle. So all these angles inside this triangle are less than 90 degrees. If that doesn't make sense to you, you need to go back and watch the geometry video. The other way to classify a triangle is say that it's obtuse. And that is if one of the angles is greater than 90 degrees. So this is greater than 90 degrees, so that's called an obtuse triangle. The third way is if it has a right angle. And so remember, a right angle means that it's 90 degrees. So the way that we generally see that written is with this little box symbol. That means that that is a 90-degree angle, and that's called a right triangle. There are properties about right triangles that we'll get into in later videos because there are some certain questions that will be particular to a right triangle. But here's one way you can classify triangles. It's just good to know in case you see these terms. Acute, all of the angles are less than 90 degrees. Obtuse, one is greater than 90 degrees. Right is one of the angles is equal to 90 degrees. The other way to classify triangles is by the length of their sides. And so the first way would be if none of the sides are the same length, that is called a scalene triangle. If two of the sides are the same length, it's called an isosceles triangle. The way that you mark that the sides are the same length is through these hash marks. So that means that these two sides are the same length. If all of the sides of a triangle are the same length, is called an equilateral triangle. Equa meaning equal, so equal lengths. So all of the sides here, so if this is length 10, then this is length 10, then that's length 10. Here, these two are the same. So it's kind of more important to understand this concept than the previous way, because you will probably get questions regarding these kinds of things, and you need to know these terms, especially isosceles and equilateral. Now, one thing that you need to know is that when you add up all the angles within a triangle, they have to equal 180 degrees. So if we have an equilateral triangle, all of the sides are equal, but also all of the angles inside, the measurement of the angles, they are also all equal. So they all have the same measurement for the angles. Now we know that every triangle, so this is universal, every triangle, when you add up the angles inside, they have to equal 180 degrees. It's important to know that. So if we have an equilateral triangle, what is the measurement of any one of the angles? Well, if they have to all add up to 180 degrees, then in an equilateral triangle, they have to each equal 60 degrees. This has to be 60, this has to be 60, and this has to be 60. Because when you add them up, 60 plus 60 is 120, plus 60 is 180. So in equilateral triangles, each angle is going to be 60 degrees. The question you are most likely going to get has to do with an isosceles triangle. So in an isosceles triangle, these two sides are equal length, but these two angles, right here, this angle here, that angle there, are also equal. So here's a question that you might get on the test. You have an isosceles triangle. It might just be written out. This is an isosceles triangle, and this angle up here is 40 degrees. I'll write it on the outside so you can see it. That angle is 40 degrees. And it might ask you, what is this angle? So the way that you're going to figure that out is through a basic algebra problem. You might be able to do it in your head, but if you don't know how to do basic algebra, go back and watch the algebra videos. But here we know we have 40 degrees, so we know that angle plus this angle, which we're going to denote as x because we're trying to figure it out, because these two are the same, right? So if this is x, this is x. So these two angles have the same measurement, so 40 plus x has to equal 180 degrees. When you add up the angles inside a triangle, it always has to be 180 degrees. So we have 40 plus x equals 180. Again, this is an algebra problem. 40 plus 2x equals 180 because x plus x is 2x. Then again, go back and watch the algebra video if you don't know how to do this. We're going to try and get x by itself. We're going to subtract 40 from each side. So we have 2x equals 180 minus 40 is 140. We're going to get x by itself. So we're going to divide by 2. And we're going to get x equals 140 divided by 2 is 70. So the measurement of that angle is 70, which is also the measurement of this angle. In an isosceles triangle, these two angles are going to be the same. So if the question is, this angle is 40 degrees, what's the measurement of this angle? You go through this process and you get 70. So that's an important thing to know. I'm going to give you another type of question that's related to vertical angles. So if you haven't watched the video on vertical angles on the Facebook page, you need to watch that. So let's say we have this type of a question. So actually I'm going to draw this a little bit differently. So you have a drawing like this. And it says this angle is 40 degrees. This angle is, we'll say, 60 degrees. What is the measurement of, and it might be, what's the measurement of this angle out here? So here we have to go back to vertical angles. So if you haven't watched that video, watch that. So you know if you have two crossing lines, if this is 40, then this is going to be 40. If this is 60, then this is going to be 60. So now we know here's a triangle. This is 40 degrees, this is 60 degrees. Again, they have to add up to 180. So we have 40 plus 60 plus what? This is the angle we're trying to figure out, equals 180. 100 plus what equals 180. So we know that down here it equals 80. Because 40 plus 60 plus 80 is 180. And always, 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 the angles inside a triangle equal 180. So if you haven't watched the video on basic geometry terms where we talk about complementary, supplementary angles, we know that in a line, so these two angles make up this line, that they have to also equal 180. So if this is 80, this has to be 100 out here, because this whole line has to equal 180. So if this is part is 80, this has to equal 100. So that's how you would figure out what that angle is.